Hey traders, welcome to the fill function lesson. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can use the fill function to fill between two values on your chart with a certain color. So it's really quite easy. For this particular demonstration, I'm going to just plot the high, and I'm going to assign this plot to a variable. So you can actually assign plots to variables and then reference those variables in other functions, like the fill function. So we're going to assign H to plot the high and L to plot the low. And then we are going to use the fill function to fill a color between these two values. So before we do that, let's save the script and see the two plots on our chart. There they are. I'll zoom in a bit here. Now let's fill between these two plots. So the fill function takes a whole bunch of parameters. There are two different versions of the fill function. One takes plots as its reference point to fill between. The other one takes horizontal lines. But the two functions behave very similarly. We'll go over the plots first. So to fill between two plots, we just need to pass in our two plot variables, so H and L. And then we need to specify a color. So I'm going to set this to color.red. And that's it. If I save the script, we will now be filling these two plots with the color red, like you see there. And as I showed in the previous lesson, if you want to use transparency, you can use the color.new, color.red, comma, and then specify your transparency. So if we wanted this to be, let's say 25% transparent, we would put in 25, close off that parentheses, and then close off the fill function parentheses, and then save the script. And it's hard to see there, but the transparency did drop. If we set this to 90, then we'll be 90% transparent and we'll barely be able to see the red color. There we go. Let's set this back to 25 and let's move on to some of these other parameters. So the next one is title. This parameter applies to all of the drawing functions in PineScript. We could call this whatever we want. We'll call this one fillet of fish. Why not? Click save. And when we open up the settings menu, there's our fillet of fish. And you can obviously adjust this however you want to. The user of your script can change the color, transparency, or turn it off if they want to. The next parameter is editable, which is the same on all of these drawing functions. This just turns on or off the editability of your plot. So if by default, it's obviously set to true because we can edit it here. But if we set this to false, save the script, then now when we open this up, there is no fillet of fish. Very disappointing. Don't know why you would want to deny the users of your script the ability to edit your fillet of fish, but if you're a party pooper like that, you can do that in your script using the editable parameter. So the next parameter that we can work with our fill function is fill gaps. So before we use this, let's create a gap in our plots. To do that, I'm going to hard code a little conditional statement in here. This is a little bit advanced. We'll cover this stuff in a future chapter of the course. So don't feel overwhelmed when you see this code. If you're new to programming, this might scare you a little bit, but don't worry, I'll explain exactly how this works in a future lesson. This is just to demonstrate what gaps look like when you're plotting onto your chart. So for this, I'm going to say, is the high greater than 116? Question mark. If so, plot the high, otherwise plot nothing. Now again, don't worry if this looks confusing to you. It's not important for this lesson. All we want to do here is generate some gaps in our plots. So let me save this script. Now you can see that our lines have become some sort of abstract art project. And I need to change this to the low. And now if I save the script, there we go. Now it might be easier for you to see what's going on here if I change the style of our plot, like I showed in the previous lesson on the plot function. We covered a few of these styles. One of the styles we didn't cover is style line break. So if I copy that down here and save the script, you can now see that there's gaps, there's breaks between some of our plots. That's because of the style we've selected here. And notice that our fill function does not fill between these gaps. Well, we can change that with the fill gaps parameter. If I set this to true and save the script, these gaps will now be filled by the fill function. Now the final parameter I haven't covered yet is the show last parameter. Now this does the same thing as it does in the plot lesson. If I set show underscore last to 10, for example, and we get rid of all of this and reset my chart, the fill function is now only filling the last 10 bars on our chart. So that's it for the plot version of the fill function. When we use the fill function to fill between two plot variables, those are all the parameters we have to work with. Now I'll show you how to use the horizontal line version of this fill function. So under syntax down here, you'll see that we have two fill functions, one with h-lines, one with plots. To use h-lines, it's quite easy. All we do is use the h-line function, and then we pass in a value. So for this example, I'm going to pass in 1.16, and for the bottom h-line, I'm going to pass in 1.155. And for this, let's set the color to color.green. And now let's save the script. And now we have an error here. I forgot that we need to include at least one output function call, like a plot, bar color, etc. We need to draw something onto the actual chart. So to do that, I'm just going to plot NA, which will just draw nothing onto our chart. If I save the script, there we go. Now it works fine. If I shrink this box down a little bit, you can see our two horizontal lines here at 116 and 155. And we're filling between those two horizontal lines. Now I won't go over all of the parameters for this fill function because they're identical to the previous one. The only difference with this one is that we do not have access to the show last parameter. So we can't use the show last parameter to limit how many bars this fill function draws over when working with horizontal lines. Anyway, there we have it. That's the fill function. Those are the parameters we have to work with. And that is the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.